When my phone rang that night, I almost didn't pick up. It was late, too late for normal calls. The house was quiet, that heavy kind of silence that comes after a long day. The TV was off, the lights were dim, and the only sound was the ticking of the clock on the living room wall. Tick, tick, tick. I was sitting on the couch, still in my work clothes, holding a mug of lukewarm tea I had forgotten to drink. My mind was somewhere else, on bills, on work emails, on the unanswered text I'd sent my husband an hour earlier. "Where are you?" He hadn't replied. When my phone lit up on the coffee table, the sound made me jump. The screen glowed in the darkened room, an unknown number flashing across it. Unknown number. At 11:37 p.m. My heart dropped just a little. Those two things together, late at night and an unknown number, never meant anything good. For a second, I just stared at it. A tiny voice inside me whispered, "Don't pick up. If you don't answer, nothing bad has happened yet." I picked it up anyway. "Hello," my voice came out rough and quiet, like it belonged to someone else. There was a tiny pause, then a calm, steady voice answered. "Ma'am, is this Mrs. Rivera?" Something cold slid down my spine. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Officer Daniels from the City Police Department." My breath caught. I sat up straight, my mug almost slipping from my hand. Is something wrong? My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Yes, ma'am. Your husband, Daniel Rivera, has been taken to St. Mary's Hospital." Everything inside me stopped. For a moment, my mind turned completely blank, as if someone had wiped it clean. All I heard was the word husband and hospital echoing over and over. My throat tightened. What happened? Is he okay?" "He's stable," the officer replied quickly, like he was used to answering that question. "He lost consciousness, but the paramedics managed to stabilize him. You need to come to the hospital as soon as possible." I stood up before I even realized I'd moved. The mug slipped from my hand and fell onto the carpet with a dull thud, spilling cold tea. My voice came out fast and shaky. "Okay, I'll come right now, but what happened? How did this happen? Was it an accident? Did he crash? Someone needs to explain." "There's something else you should know, ma'am," the officer cut in gently. His voice softened just a little. "Your husband was not alone when we found him." I frowned, my hand tightened around the phone. "What do you mean?" "He was found in a parking lot next to St. Mary's," the officer said slowly. "There was a woman with him." "A woman?" The words hit me like a slap. I swallowed. "A woman?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. "We're still getting the full report, but from what we know, they were together. She was the one who called the ambulance." I couldn't speak. It felt like someone had suddenly pressed a pillow over my face. I couldn't breathe right. The room around me blurred for a moment, my vision tunneling as my mind tried to understand. "My husband. In the hospital. With another woman." I don't understand," I whispered. "What do you mean together?" There was a short silence, like he was choosing his words. "We found them in the backseat of a car, ma'am," he said finally. "It looked personal, I'm sorry. The doctors will give you more details, but right now, you just need to get here safely. Can you drive?" My legs felt weak. I reached out blindly and grabbed the edge of the coffee table just to stay upright. "Yes," I said, even though I wasn't sure. "I can drive." "Okay," he replied. "St. Mary's ER entrance. When you arrive, go to the front desk and tell them you're Daniel Rivera's wife. They're expecting you." "Is the woman still there?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Yes, ma'am," he answered. "She's at the hospital too. She's not injured. She's giving a statement now." The room tilted slightly. I closed my eyes. "Okay," I forced out. "I'm on my way." "We'll see you soon, Mrs. Rivera," he said. "Please drive carefully." The line went dead. I stayed there, holding the phone to my ear long after the call had ended, listening to the empty silence. My hand was shaking so badly that I had to put the phone down before I dropped it. My first thought was not even about the woman. It was about Daniel. My husband, the man I'd known for 12 years. The man I had married because I believed he was safe, kind, honest. The man who'd promised me we'd always have each other. I pictured him in a hospital bed, pale and hooked up to machines, and a part of me wanted to scream. Another part of me whispered, of course there was a woman. Because deep inside, this wasn't completely shocking, not if I was honest with myself. The late nights, the sudden work emergencies, the way he avoided eye contact when I asked too many questions, the way his phone was always upside down on the table. The red flags had always been there, floating in front of me like warning signs, and I had walked past every single one of them with my eyes closed. I bent down, picked up the mug I had dropped, and set it on the table with trembling hands. Tea soaked into the carpet, a dark stain spreading like a shadow. That was how it felt, like something dark had finally spread out from the center of my life, and there was no going back. I moved on autopilot. I grabbed my bag, my keys, my jacket from the back of the chair. Every move felt slow and heavy, like I was underwater. As I walked to the door, I glanced at the framed wedding picture hanging on the wall. Us, years ago, me in a white dress, him in a suit, his arms around me, we looked so happy. People had always told us we were that couple, the one that made marriage look easy. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I turned off the light and walked out. The night air hit me the second I stepped outside, cold, sharp, almost painful. The street was quiet, no neighbors outside, no cars passing, just my footsteps echoing on the pavement as I hurried to the car. My hands were still shaking when I opened the driver's door. I sat down and forced myself to close my eyes. Breathe. In. Out. I needed to get to that hospital. I needed to see him. I needed to know. The engine roared to life, and I pulled out of the driveway, my stomach twisted in knots. The city lights blurred past as I drove, my fingers white-knuckled around the steering wheel. Every few seconds, my thoughts jumped from one fear to another. What if he dies? What if he lives? What if that woman is his mistress? What if she's been in my house before, on my couch, at my table? My mind wouldn't stop. I kept seeing her, even though I had no idea what she looked like. In my imagination, she was everything I feared I was. Younger. Prettier. More exciting. Less tired wife, more new adventure. Was she the reason he had been distant? The reason he had stopped touching me with that gentle warmth that used to be so natural? The reason he had started leaving the house with his phone in his hand and his eyes somewhere far away? Anger bubbled in my chest, hot and wild. It sat right next to the fear, both of them fighting for space inside me. I pressed my foot a little harder on the gas. As I reached the main road that led to the hospital, I caught a red light and had to stop. The waiting made everything worse. The car felt like a cage, the air thick with the smell of my own sweat and the faint scent of the vanilla air freshener. I stared at myself in the rearview mirror. My face looked different. Pale, streaks of mascara had smudged under my eyes. I looked like a stranger, someone who had just had her world ripped apart. A tiny voice in my head whispered, maybe this is a misunderstanding. Maybe the woman was a coworker. Maybe she was a relative of someone. Maybe the way they found them wasn't what it seemed. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to cling to that tiny, fragile hope like a life jacket in the middle of an ocean. But the officer's words kept replaying in my mind. Backseat of a car. It looked personal. She was the one who called the ambulance. No matter how I twisted it, it felt wrong. It felt like betrayal. The light turned green. I drove. The roads were almost empty at that hour. The city looked softer at night, the harsh details hidden in shadow. But inside my chest, everything was sharp and clear. Every mile I drove brought me closer to the truth. St. Mary's Hospital looked different at night. The bright lights outside the entrance seemed too white, too clean. The glass doors slid open and closed as people walked in and out, nurses in scrubs, a tired-looking doctor with a clipboard, a woman holding a child wrapped in a blanket. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there for a moment, the engine still running. This was it. I turned off the car, everything went quiet. My hands felt numb as I climbed out and shut the door. I wrapped my jacket tighter around me, though it wasn't really cold. It was something else I was trying to protect myself from. The humiliation. The questions. The looks. I walked toward the entrance, my feet feeling heavy, as if the ground was trying to hold me back. Inside, the smell hit me first, the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic and something else underneath it, something metallic and faint. The hospital felt too bright. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Chairs lined the wall, some filled with people hunched over their phones or staring into space. My heart raced as I approached the front desk. The woman sitting there looked tired but kind. Her name tag said Mia. She looked up and forced a small, professional smile. "Hi, can I help you?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but my voice didn't come out at first. I swallowed and tried again. "Yes, my husband, Daniel Rivera. I got a call from the police. They said he's here." Her face changed slightly at the name, something passing through her eyes that I couldn't quite read. "Yes, Mrs. Rivera," she said. "He's in the emergency unit. The officers told us you were coming." The way she said Mrs. Rivera, gently, almost carefully, made my stomach twist. "Is he okay?" I asked quietly. "Can I see him?" "He's stable," she replied. "The doctor is with him now. You can wait in that area there." She pointed toward a row of seats near double doors that led deeper into the hospital. "They'll come get you as soon as they can." I nodded, even though my legs were screaming at me to run forward, to push through the doors, to find his room myself. As I turned to go, I heard voices behind me. A woman laughing, low, soft, and familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I didn't know her, but I knew that type of laugh, confident, relaxed, like she belonged there. I froze. "Excuse me," the same woman's voice said, closer now. "I'm with Daniel Rivera as well, his friend." Her friend. The word slashed through the air. I didn't turn around yet. My feet stayed glued to the floor. Mia's voice became more careful. "Yes, we have you on file as well. The officers mentioned you." The woman beside me shifted. I could feel her now, just at my shoulder. Perfume drifted toward me, something floral and sweet. Expensive. "I need to know how he is," she said, her tone steady. "I was there when it happened." My throat burned. I turned. Our eyes met. She wasn't what I had pictured. She wasn't impossibly young or impossibly glamorous. She was normal, maybe a few years younger than me, with dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail and sharp brown eyes that flicked over my face and then down to my hand. My wedding ring. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You must be his wife," she said. My heart stopped. Mia, behind the desk, suddenly looked very interested in her computer screen. I tried to speak, but the words were stuck somewhere behind the lump in my throat. "Yes," I managed. "I'm his wife." She tilted her head slightly. "I'm Olivia." Just her first name, just like that. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. "How do you know my husband, Olivia?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp at the edges. She held my gaze, unflinching. "We work together," she said calmly. "We were out together tonight when he collapsed." Out together. Those words landed like a fist. "Mrs. Rivera," Mia cut in gently, looking between us as if she was standing between two storms. "Why don't you both sit down while you wait? The doctor will be out soon." I nodded stiffly, though I didn't take my eyes off Olivia. She didn't look away either. It felt like a silent challenge hanging in the air between us. Finally, I turned and walked toward the seating area. My legs felt unsteady. I chose a chair near the end of the row, leaving an empty seat between us when Olivia followed and sat down too. For a while, we didn't speak. The only sounds were the beeping of machines from behind the doors and the soft murmur of strangers talking in low voices across the room. I stared at my hands. My wedding ring glinted under the harsh lights. I twisted it unconsciously, my mind racing. I had imagined this moment before, in my nightmares. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Me in one corner. Her in another. Both connected to the same man, but in completely different ways. Humiliation washed over me, thick and heavy. How many people knew? The officer, the hospital staff, maybe even neighbors if they'd seen something earlier. How many of them were thinking, poor wife, she didn't know. I wanted to disappear. But another part of me, the part that had survived every bad day, every argument, every disappointment, refused to vanish quietly. I kept my face calm, my back straight. I would not fall apart in the middle of this waiting room, not in front of her, not where everyone could see. If I broke, I would do it later, when the doors were closed and no one was watching. For now, I waited. For answers. For the doctor. For the truth that I knew was coming, whether I was ready or not. Minutes turned into something that felt like hours. At some point, Olivia sighed and crossed her legs. "You know," she said suddenly, her voice soft but clear, "you deserve to know what's going on." I turned my head slowly, my eyes finding hers. And just like that, I knew. Whatever she was about to say, it was going to change everything. When she said, "You deserve to know what's going on," my heart squeezed so tight I thought it might stop. I stared at her, this woman with calm eyes and neatly tied hair, sitting 2 seats away from me like we were waiting for the same bus, not the same man. The hospital's harsh lights made everything feel sharper, colder. I could hear the sounds of the emergency ward, phones ringing, doors opening and closing, a baby crying somewhere in the distance, but they all faded behind the pounding of my own heartbeat. I swallowed, my throat felt dry. "Then tell me," I said quietly, "what exactly is going on, Olivia?" She looked at me in a way that made my skin crawl. Not cruel, not kind, just steady, like she had already decided something in her head. "I didn't know he was still married," she said first. "Not at the beginning." My stomach lurched. "At the beginning?" She nodded slowly. "We've been seeing each other for 6 months. 6 months. The words slammed into me like a truck. 6 months. Half a year. My brain tried to count backwards automatically. 6 months ago was April. I thought about that month, our anniversary dinner, the flowers he'd brought home, the way he had kissed my forehead instead of my lips when I leaned toward him. I thought it was because he was tired. 6 months ago, I had bought him a new watch for our anniversary, a small surprise gift. Apparently, he had bought himself something too. I stared at her, my hands going numb. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to stand up and shout for the universe to stop for 1 second so I could catch my breath. But all I did was sit there, very still. "How did you meet?" I asked, surprised that my voice didn't break. "At work," she said simply. "He was funny, smart, he listened. I liked him." Her eyes softened for a moment, and something about that almost made me laugh. Of course my husband would be charming. Of course he'd be that version of himself with her. The old version, the one who listened, the one who made me feel special once upon a time. "Did you know he had a wife?" I asked. I needed to hear it again, needed to know exactly how deep this went. She looked down for a brief moment. "He said it was complicated," she said, "that things were basically over between you, that you were more like roommates." Heat rushed up my neck. Roommates? I suddenly remembered all those evenings where we had eaten in silence. The nights we went to bed back to back, the mornings when he left early without saying goodbye. It was like watching puzzle pieces slide into place one by one. "And you believed him?" I asked, my voice sharper than before. She lifted her chin. "At first, yes. Then I started noticing things, phone calls he ignored, messages he cleared quickly, the way he would rush home sometimes." I stared at her, anger and shame twisting together inside me. "You could have walked away," I said. "You could have stopped." She held my gaze. So could he. That hit harder than it should have. I looked away. Silence stretched between us, heavy, awkward, full of things neither of us wanted to say. In that moment, I realized something painful. I hated her. But I hated him more. He was the one who made the vows. He was the one who came home to me every night. He was the one who looked me in the eye and lied. "I didn't come here to fight with you," Olivia said quietly. "I came because I was scared." He collapsed right next to me. 1 second he was yelling, the next he was on the ground. "Yelling," I echoed. She nodded. "We were arguing in the car. He was stressed. He'd been drinking a bit, not a lot, but enough. He said you were making his life harder." She glanced at me for a second. "He said you were too controlling, that you always complained, that you never saw him." Each word felt like a knife. It was strange. Instead of making me feel guilty, something inside me hardened. My hurt started to turn into anger with a different shape. "He said that?" I asked, my voice low. "Yeah," she said. "We were in the parking lot. He started shouting, I shouted back, and then he just grabbed his chest and fell. I called 911. I pictured it. My husband arguing with his girlfriend in his car like a dramatic scene in a movie, while I sat at home, wondering why he hadn't answered my text. I felt small. Stupid. Like the last person in the room to understand the joke. Footsteps echoed nearby, pulling me back to the present. A nurse walked past, pushing a cart. She glanced at us, then at a clipboard in her hand. Family of Daniel Rivera, she called out. Both Olivia and I stood at the same time. The nurse blinked, surprised. Oh, are you both family? Olivia spoke first. I'm with him, she said quickly. The nurse looked at her, then at me. Mia, at the front desk, cleared her throat and said quietly, she's his wife. She nodded toward me. For a second, no one spoke. Just that word. Wife. It hung in the air. The nurse's cheeks flushed. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Rivera, the doctor will see you first. He's just finished examining your husband. You can follow me. I could feel Olivia's eyes on me. The nurse's mistake sat between us like poison. My face burned. Oh, Olivia said lightly, but I heard the tension in it. Of course, I'll just wait here then. There was something in her tone, something tight and defensive, maybe a crack in her confidence. For the first time, I didn't feel completely powerless. But the humiliation still stung. I followed the nurse toward a set of double doors. I could feel eyes on my back, people in the waiting room probably wondering who the other woman was, what kind of drama they were watching unfold. I had become a story in someone else's head. Did you see that? The wife and the mistress, like a soap opera. The thought made my skin crawl. We walked down a hallway filled with beeping machines and the soft murmur of voices behind curtains. My heart pounded faster with each step. Is he really okay? I asked the nurse, almost afraid to hear the answer. She glanced at me with sympathy. His heart rate and vitals are stable now. He passed out from a combination of stress and alcohol, the doctor thinks. They're running more tests to be sure. Stress. So I guess cheating was stressful now. We stopped outside a room with the door half open. Inside, I could see him. Daniel. My husband. He was lying on the bed, pale, an IV in his arm. Wires connected his chest to a monitor. The machine beeped steadily, each sound proof that he was still alive. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The anger. The humiliation. The other woman outside. All I felt was something deep, an old tugging, inside my chest. This was the man I had married. The man I had built a life with. The man I had once stayed up late talking with about silly dreams and big plans. He looked smaller somehow, fragile. Mrs. Rivera, a male voice said from beside me. I turned to see a doctor standing nearby, a chart in his hand. He was in his mid-40s, with tired eyes and kind lines around them. Yes, I said, straightening. I'm Dr. Harris, he said. I've been treating your husband. How is he? I asked, my eyes flickering back to the bed. He lost consciousness due to what appears to be a mix of emotional stress and alcohol, the doctor said gently. We're checking his heart, running blood tests, doing a scan to rule out anything more serious. But right now, his condition is stable. Is he going to be okay? My voice trembled slightly. The doctor nodded. Most likely, yes, he'll need rest. He'll also need to address the stress triggers in his life. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The relief came in a sudden wave, making my knees feel weak. He was alive. Alive and cheating and lying, but alive. Can I go in? I asked. Of course, the doctor replied. He's still a bit groggy. He might not remember everything right away. Try not to bring up anything too emotional until he's more awake, okay? I nodded, though the idea of not bringing up emotional things felt impossible. The nurse left us, and the doctor gave me one last sympathetic nod before walking away. I could tell from his eyes that he had seen this before. Not my exact situation, but something close. A collapse, a secret, a spouse walking in with their heart in pieces. I took a deep breath and stepped into the room. It was small, bright, too white. There was a machine at his side, a chair near the bed, and the faint humming of air conditioning. I stood at the foot of the bed, just looking at him. His hair was messy, his face unshaven. His lips were slightly parted. The hospital gown made him look vulnerable, like a child pretending to be sick. I moved closer, my chest tight. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice barely audible. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, he turned his head a little, as if lifting it through sand. He murmured, a small frown pulling at his eyebrows. I watched him wake up like I was watching a stranger. His eyes opened halfway and blinked a few times. Then he saw me. For a moment, pure confusion flashed across his face. "Janet," he croaked. My name in his mouth felt different now, like it came from far away, like it belonged to another life. "Yes," I said, "it's me." He glanced around, trying to take in the room. Then his hand lifted weakly, reaching for the wires attached to his chest. What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You collapsed," I said. "In the parking lot, they brought you here." He frowned. "The parking lot." I stared at him, my heartbeat picking up again. "With Olivia," I added. His eyes froze. He didn't need more explanation. I saw the exact moment the memory came back to him, the way his jaw tensed, the way his eyes darkened. He looked away from me. My hands clenched by my sides. "You scared her," I said quietly. "She's outside." He let out a breath that was almost a sigh. "Of course she is." Those 4 words cut me in a way I didn't expect. Of course she is. Like it was normal, like it made sense that she was here, that she belonged. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "The police called me," I continued. "They said my husband was in the hospital. They said they found him with a woman." He flinched. I saw it. It was small, but it was there. "Janet, he began, but his voice cracked and faded. I waited. Waited for him to apologize, to explain, to deny it, to say it's not what it looks like, to say I made a mistake. Anything. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment and took a slow breath. When he opened them again, something had changed. His expression hardened, like he was putting on armor. "This isn't the time for this," he said quietly. "I just got out of the ER. Can we not do this right now?" I stared at him, stunned. Not do this right now. That's what he had to say. Not "I'm sorry, Janet." Not "I messed up." Just not now. Something inside me cracked in a different way. "This," I repeated slowly, "you mean your affair." He winced slightly at the word. "Janet." 6 months, I said, my voice suddenly steady, even though I felt like shaking. "She told me, you've been seeing her for 6 months." He swallowed, his eyes shifted away from mine. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he muttered. I laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. "Oh, I'm sorry," I said. "Was there a better way you were planning to reveal that you had a second life, Daniel? A PowerPoint? A dinner speech?" His face tightened. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Things have been bad between us for a long time, you know that." Suddenly, the room felt too small, the air too thin. "Things have been hard," I shot back. "Yes, but we were supposed to fix that. You and me, not you and some woman from work in the backseat of a car." My voice rose slightly, but I didn't care. The beeping of the monitor sped up in response, each faster beep like an echo of my heart. He glanced at the machine, then at the door, nervous. "I'm hooked up to heart monitors, Janet," he said. "Do you really want to send me back into cardiac arrest because you want a fight right now?" That was it. The humiliation in the waiting room. The nurse mixing us up. Olivia's quiet confidence. The officer's voice. All of it boiled up inside me and changed into something new. A strange calm. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, really looked at him, as if I was seeing him for the first time. "You almost died," I said slowly, "and the thing you're most worried about is me making you uncomfortable." He opened his mouth, then closed it. We stared at each other for a beat that felt like an hour. I realized in that moment that I had been afraid of this day for a long time. Not exactly like this, not with police and hospitals, but the truth part. The day when I would no longer be able to pretend that everything was fine. And now it was here. No more pretending. No more excuses. No more "he's just stressed," or "work has been hard," or "he still loves me, I'm sure." Something inside me, something small but solid, sat up straight. "I came here because I thought you might be dying," I said quietly. "I drove here shaking. I walked through those doors not knowing if I would find you alive." His eyes flickered. "And I did," I continued. "I found you alive. I also found out that my husband has been telling another woman we're basically over, that we're like roommates, that I'm controlling, that I make his life harder." He opened his mouth again, but I held up my hand. "Don't," I said. "Don't tell me I misunderstood. Don't tell me it's complicated. It's actually very simple." He fell silent. "My husband," I said slowly, "cheated on me, and then blamed me for it." The words hung between us. I thought saying them would break me, that it would feel like a free fall. Instead, for the first time that night, they made me feel steady. Like I was finally standing on something real. He looked away, jaw clenched. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he muttered. I almost laughed again. "You didn't mean to keep seeing her for 6 months?" I asked. "You didn't mean to lie every time you walked out the door? You didn't mean to make me think I was crazy when I asked questions?" His face tightened. I watched him, feeling something shift inside me. There he was. Not the man in our wedding picture. Not the man from our early years. Not the man I had been defending in my head for months. The real one. The one who had made choices. The one who had built a secret life. The one who had let me sit at home alone while he was out with coworkers. I took a step back from the bed. He noticed. "Where are you going?" he asked, panic flickering in his eyes for the first time. I looked at him calmly. "I'm going to let you rest," I said. "You're stable, the doctor said so, and I'm not going to be the reason your heart monitor spikes." "Janet, wait," he said, reaching out weakly with his hand, the IV line pulling. "We need to talk about this." "We will," I said, "but not here, not while you're hooked up to machines and using your condition as a shield." He stared at me, surprised. This wasn't the reaction he expected. He expected me to break down, to beg, to cling, to say "how could you?" instead of "I see you now." "I'll tell the nurse you're awake," I added. "I'm sure they'll let her come in next." His eyes widened. "Janet." I cut him off with a small nod. "You chose this," I said softly. "Both of you did. You can explain things to her now. I already heard enough." Something flashed across his face then, panic, regret, something he didn't have time to hide. I turned away. As I reached the door, I paused with my hand on the handle. "I almost died inside tonight," I said quietly without looking back. "I think that counts too." Then I opened the door and stepped out. Olivia looked up from her seat as soon as I walked back into the waiting area. Her eyes searched my face, trying to read it. "Well," she asked, her voice was careful. "He's awake," I said. "You can probably see him soon. Ask the nurse." She stood slowly, uncertainty flickering across her face for the first time. "Did he say anything?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "He said it's not the time to talk about anything emotional." Her mouth parted slightly. "Oh," she whispered. We stared at each other for a moment. Two women in different clothes, different lives, holding the same broken truth in our hands. "I'm going home," I said. "Home," she repeated, surprised. "You're just leaving." I straightened my shoulders. "No," I said calmly, "I'm not just leaving." I slipped my hand down, twisting my wedding ring once. "I'm starting," I added. She frowned. "Starting what?" I looked past her for a moment, at the automatic doors that led back out into the night, into the world, into whatever my life was going to be after this. "Something new," I said. Then I walked past her, past the front desk, past the curious eyes, out into the cold night air. My heart was still hurting. My world was still cracked. Nothing was fixed. But for the first time since the phone call, I felt something other than fear and shame. I felt the faint, fragile shape of something else. A beginning. I didn't know what part 3 of my life would look like yet. But for the first time, I knew one thing clearly. It wasn't going to look like this. When I stepped out of the hospital that night, the cold air felt sharper than usual. It hit my lungs like ice, but somehow it helped. It made me feel awake, alive, like my brain was finally catching up with everything my heart had already understood. My husband had cheated. He had lied. And he had made me feel like the problem. I stood by the parking lot, staring at the yellow lights reflecting on the wet ground. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I couldn't handle anyone's voice, not yet. I needed silence. I needed space. I needed to breathe. For the first time in years, I actually paid attention to my own breathing. Slow in. Slow out. Like I had to remind my body that I still existed. I reached my car, opened the door, and sat inside. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, not from shock anymore, from anger. A deep, slow anger that felt like it had been building for years, hiding behind every excuse I made for him. I rested my head on the steering wheel. Why, I whispered to myself, why did he do this to me? The car didn't answer, the night didn't answer. Only my heartbeat did, steady, loud, alive. When I finally reached home, everything felt different. The living room, the lamp, the couch, everything that belonged to us felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone naive. Someone I no longer recognized. I walked inside slowly. The silence felt heavy. It wrapped around me like a thick blanket, a suffocating one. I dropped my keys on the table and sank onto the couch. My body felt exhausted, but my mind was racing, replaying every little moment from the last few months, every changed schedule, every late night at the office, every time he pulled away when I kissed him, every time he said he was too tired. The signs were everywhere. I saw them now like big red lights. Maybe I saw them then too. But I didn't want to believe them. I pressed my palms over my eyes. The tears didn't come yet. They would, I knew they would, but not now. Right now, my brain wanted answers. The truth was dripping through my life slowly, like water from a cracked pipe. It kept soaking everything, ruining it inch by inch. Around 1:30 a.m., I finally forced myself to get up. I needed something to do, something to focus on, or else I was going to drown in my thoughts. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the dim light over the stove, and made tea. The simple motion, pouring water, heating it, holding the warm cup, felt grounding. I sat at the table and stared into my mug. 6 months. That woman, Olivia, had known him for 6 months. She had talked to him, laughed with him, probably shared things he never shared with me anymore. The truth was slowly connecting itself, like puzzle pieces. What else was he hiding? How long had he been unhappy? Was it really about me, or was it about something inside him? That thought stung because it felt like a twisted kind of kindness to him. I didn't want to be kind right now, but I couldn't help thinking about it. He didn't collapse because he was out having fun. He collapsed after an argument. After stress. After drinking. He collapsed after living 2 lives. And somehow, I was the one sitting here feeling broken. The next morning, the sun felt too bright. Like the world had no idea that my life had cracked open only hours ago. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen. My face was pale. My hair was messy. I looked like someone who had aged overnight. I splashed water on my face and took a deep breath. Then my phone vibrated. A message. Daniel, can you bring me some clothes later? That was it, no apology, no explanation. No, I'm sorry you had to find out like that. Just a practical message like nothing had happened. I stared at the screen and felt my blood heat. He wanted clothes. Fine. I packed some clothes in silence. A shirt. Pants. Socks. And yes, I threw in the cheapest, ugliest underwear I could find in the drawer, because I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of comfort. A small, spiteful victory, but it made me feel human again. At noon, I arrived at the hospital. The same waiting room. The same smell of antiseptic. But this time, I felt different walking through those doors. Stronger, harder, as if the night had carved something clean out of me. When I reached his room, the door was half open. I stepped in quietly. Olivia was inside, sitting beside his bed, talking to him, her hand resting lightly on the blanket near his. They both turned when they heard me. For a moment, the world went silent. Then he spoke. Oh, you're here. Like I was the unexpected visitor. Like she was the normal one. I held up the bag with his clothes. You asked for these. He reached for it, thanks. I handed it to him without moving closer. Olivia stood up awkwardly. I should maybe step outside. No, Daniel said quickly, too quickly. It's fine. That did something to me. Something sharp. I turned to her. Actually, yes, please step outside. She hesitated. Daniel frowned. Janet. I held up a hand. She and I aren't finished. Olivia swallowed. She looked from him to me, then quietly left the room. The door clicked shut behind her. I looked at him. He looked everywhere but at me. Are you feeling better? I asked, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He nodded. Yeah, mostly. His tone was annoyed, defensive, like I was the problem. The truth slipped out through that one tone. There it was, proof that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a long, slow betrayal. So, I said, crossing my arms, are you going to tell me the truth now? He sighed heavily. Not this again. My jaw tightened. Not this again. Daniel, you cheated on me. He rubbed his forehead. Can you please not shout? I'm not shouting, I said, though I could feel anger burning under my skin. I want to know what happened. I want to know why. He stared at the blanket. You already know why. No, I snapped. I only know what she told me. His eyes flicked up briefly, then away again. You didn't want to talk, he said. You never did. You were always busy, always stressed about everything. So your solution was to find someone else? I asked. He didn't answer. Another truth slipped into the room. He didn't regret it. Not enough. Not the way a man who loved his wife would regret betraying her. I shook my head slowly. You could have talked to me. You could have told me you weren't happy. He laughed bitterly. You wouldn't have listened. That hurt. Deeply. Because maybe there was some truth in it. Maybe I had been tired. Maybe I had been overwhelmed. Maybe I had been distant. But I had never stopped loving him. And I had never used my pain as a reason to cheat. I took a step back from his bed, holding myself together. Do you love her? I asked quietly. The question hung between us like a knife. He didn't answer. And that was the answer. I felt something break inside me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet final snap. He looked at me, maybe realizing the weight of his silence. Janet, wait. I lifted a hand. Don't. I felt strangely calm, a calm that came from a place of absolute clarity. For 6 months, I said softly, you lived a double life. You lied to me every single day. You let me think we were okay, that we were fixable. And all this time, you were giving your heart to someone else. He opened his mouth, but I kept going. And when I found you in the hospital, I whispered, you didn't apologize. You didn't explain. You told me not to bring up anything emotional. I let the truth settle like dust. You made your choice, Daniel. His eyes widened slightly. I turned toward the door. I'm done trying to fix something you destroyed. Janet, he called. I paused at the doorway but didn't turn around. Yes, I said. Don't leave. I closed my eyes for a moment. Daniel, I said quietly, you left first. Then I stepped into the hallway. Olivia was there, waiting. She straightened when she saw me. Is he okay? She asked softly. He's awake, I said. You can go in. She hesitated. Janet, I didn't know. I nodded once. I believe you. She looked relieved, almost emotional. But then I added, but knowing now, what you do next is on you. Her face fell slightly. I walked past her without waiting for a reply. As I left the hospital, I finally felt the truth settle. It was heavy. It was painful. But it was clean. There was nothing left to question anymore. Nothing left to doubt. The betrayal wasn't a maybe. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't an accident. It was real. Solid. Complete. And in that brutal honesty, I finally felt the first hint of freedom. Not happiness. Not peace. Not forgiveness. Just the beginning. A whisper inside me. A spark. A thought. I deserve better. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The days after the hospital felt strange. Everything looked the same on the outside, same walls, same furniture, same bed, but nothing felt the same. It was like someone had taken my life, shaken it hard, and put all the pieces back in the wrong places. I kept moving because I had to. Work, cooking, cleaning, my hands did things out of habit while my mind stayed somewhere else. It kept going back to that hospital room, to his silence, to his excuses, to the moment he didn't deny loving her. That memory sat inside me like a stone. He stayed at the hospital for 2 days. During that time, he sent short, cold messages. Daniel, they're keeping me one more night. Daniel, doctor says I need to manage stress. Daniel, we need to talk when I'm back. Not once did he say I'm sorry. Not once did he say I messed up or I hurt you. No, it was always we need to talk, like this was a shared crime, like we had both broken something. On the second evening, he called. I stared at his name on my phone. For a full minute, I just looked at it ringing, remembering the night the unknown number lit up my screen and shattered my life. I almost didn't answer. But then I did. I pressed the phone to my ear. Yeah. He sighed on the other end. They're discharging me tomorrow. Can you pick me up? There it was again. Not how are you? Not are you okay? Just can you pick me up? Yes, I said slowly. I'll come. There was a pause. Janet, he started, his voice softer. We really do need to talk. I stared at a crack on the wall. We will. I hung up first. And it felt good. The next morning, the sun was bright and unforgiving. I drove to the hospital in silence, the radio off. I wasn't crying. I hadn't cried yet, not really. Little tears had slipped out in the shower, but I hadn't had the full breakdown people always talked about. I wondered if my heart was waiting, for a specific moment, one last thing, the thing that would finally push it over the edge. I had a feeling it was coming. When I entered the hospital, I didn't feel that shaking fear like the first time. I knew where I was going now. I knew who I was going to see. And I knew who he really was. I walked down the hall, turned left, and found his room. The door was open. He was sitting up in bed, dressed in the clothes I had brought him, a plain t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was slightly messy, his expression serious. His eyes lifted when he saw me. You're here, he said. Yes, I replied, stepping inside. You ready to leave? Almost, just waiting for the nurse to bring paperwork. He looked at me for a moment. You look tired. I almost laughed. He looked at me like someone might look at a coworker who had a rough week, not a wife he had shattered. I am tired, I said. I didn't exactly have a relaxing few nights. He shifted uncomfortably. Janet. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. You said we needed to talk, so talk. He rubbed his forehead and let out a long breath, like I was the one stressing him out. I know you're angry, he said. I get it, but I've been under a lot of pressure. Work has been crazy, and we've been distant for a long time. The house, the routine, the bills, everything has been suffocating. I just needed. I finished the sentence for him. Someone else. His jaw tightened. I needed something different. I needed to feel like I was alive again, like I mattered. I stared at him. So you picked her. He didn't say anything. It still amazed me how he could be so calm about it, how he could rip my life apart and explain it like a math problem. You could have gone to therapy, I said. You could have asked for a break. You could have done 100 things that didn't include lying to me. He shrugged. I didn't want to blow things up. I thought I could handle it. You did blow things up, I snapped. You set a bomb in the middle of our marriage and walked away like it wasn't ticking. The monitor next to the bed beeped a little faster. He glanced at it annoyed. See, this is what I mean. You go straight to drama, you always do. The words hit me harder than they should have. Drama. That's what he thought this was, not the consequences of his choices, just my overreaction. Something inside my chest twisted tight. This isn't drama, I said slowly. This is my life, our vows. He rolled his eyes slightly. Come on, Janet, you know no marriage stays perfect. People grow apart. People don't accidentally fall into 6-month affairs, I replied. That's not growing apart. That's walking away quietly and hoping the other person doesn't notice. He looked at me then, really looked. There was a brief flash of guilt in his eyes, then it hardened into something else, defense. "Look," he said, adjusting his position like he was getting ready for a business meeting. "I'm not saying I handled this well. I'm just saying there were reasons. You haven't exactly been easy to live with either." There it was. The thing I had been waiting for. The moment when he'd finally say it out loud. "This is your fault too." "How so?" I asked, my voice flat. He gestured weakly with his hand. "You're always stressed, always criticizing. The way I stack plates, the way I drive, the way I put my shoes near the door. We keep fighting over stupid things. You've been cold for a long time. I feel like I can't do anything right around you." His words slid into me like cold knives. A part of me wanted to say, that's not true. Another part remembered every annoyed sigh from me, every complaint, every eye roll. Not because I didn't love him, but because I felt like I was carrying everything. And I was tired, so tired. "I've been overwhelmed," I said softly. "Not cold, overwhelmed, there's a difference." He shrugged, same result. He said it so casually, so carelessly, that something in me snapped. I straightened. "So let me get this straight," I said coldly. "I was stressed about working full-time, taking care of the house, managing bills, and trying to pull emotion out of a husband who kept drifting farther away. And your solution wasn't to help me, or talk to me, or listen. It was to cheat on me and then blame my stress for your affair." He shut his mouth. For the first time since I arrived, he didn't have an answer. "Good." I pushed off the wall and stepped closer, my eyes never leaving his. "I may not have been perfect," I said, "but I stayed. I stayed when I was tired. I stayed when I was frustrated. I stayed when you left your clothes all over the floor and forgot our plans and came home late. I stayed when you shut down every time I tried to talk about us. I stayed and I tried, even when it hurt." My voice trembled, but it was from strength, not weakness. "You," I continued, "left long before tonight." He swallowed, his eyes dropping. We stayed like that for a moment, him looking down, me standing there, breathing hard, the machines humming around us. A nurse knocked lightly on the door and stepped in. "Mr. Rivera," she said with a polite smile, "we have your discharge forms ready." He cleared his throat, voice suddenly small. "Yeah, okay, thanks." She handed him a clipboard, then glanced at me kindly before leaving again. He signed the papers quietly. When he finished, he looked up at me. "So what now?" he asked. Such a small question, such a huge answer. I let out a slow breath. "Now you come home, you rest, and we decide what's next." He nodded like that made sense. Like what's next might mean a simple fix, some tears, maybe forgiveness. He had no idea. The drive home was almost silent. He sat beside me, staring out the window. I could feel him sneaking glances at me sometimes, like he wanted to say something, but each time he stayed quiet. I didn't speak either. The truth was loud enough between us. When we pulled into the driveway and got out of the car, I felt a strange heaviness. The house looked different now. The front door, the windows, the little garden I tried to keep alive each year. It all had his fingerprints on it, his shadow. We walked in. He dropped his hospital bag near the hallway and stretched slightly. "God, I'm so glad to be out of there." I stood near the door, watching him wander into the kitchen like it was just another day. He opened a cabinet, took out a glass, and poured himself some water. He didn't ask me how I'd been. He didn't even say thank you for driving him. My anger began to burn low and steady inside me, like a long fuse. "I'm going to take a shower," he said, already walking toward the bathroom. "We'll talk after." "Sure," I said quietly. The shower turned on moments later. The sound of running water echoed down the hall. I stood there in the living room, staring at the wedding photo on the wall. Two young people, smiling like they knew every answer. I walked closer. In the photo, he was looking at me with soft eyes. I remembered that day. I remembered how my heart had felt full, like I couldn't believe someone wanted to spend their life with me. I wanted to rip the frame down. Instead, I reached out and touched the glass lightly. "Who were you back then?" I whispered, "and where did he go?" My own reflection stared back at me, tired, hurt, angry. And then, from down the hall, his voice. "Janet, can you bring me a towel?" My jaw clenched. A towel. My husband had cheated on me, lied to me, humiliated me, and now he was calling from the shower like I was his personal assistant. That was the moment. The exact second something inside me shifted. The breaking point didn't come from screaming in a hospital room or seeing him with another woman. It came from 4 simple words shouted through steam. "Can you bring me?" I walked slowly toward the bathroom, my mind suddenly very, very clear. The door was slightly open. Steam rolled out into the hallway. I could see the blur of his outline behind the shower curtain. "Janet," he called again, "did you hear me?" I reached for the doorknob. Then I stopped. I let my hand fall. "No," I said calmly. The water rushed louder, as if to fill the silence. He froze. "What?" I raised my voice a little. I said, "No, get your own towel." There was a pause. "You serious?" he asked, a laugh in his voice like he thought I was joking. "Yes," I replied, "I'm serious." The laugh faded. "Why are you being like this?" he snapped. "I just got out of the hospital." I stared at the closed door. "You just got out of the hospital," I said evenly. "After cheating on me and blaming me for it. You can dry yourself." Silence. Then the sound of the shower turning off. I walked away before he opened the door. In the kitchen, I pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, my heart pounding. It wasn't about the towel. It was about everything that towel represented. I had been taking care of him for so long, emotionally, mentally, practically, that he expected it as a right, not a kindness. Not anymore. A few minutes later, he walked into the kitchen in a towel, his hair still wet, annoyance all over his face. "What was that about?" he demanded. I looked up at him calmly. "That was your first clue." "Clue to what?" "That things," I said, "are not going back to normal." He frowned. "Oh, come on, don't start this." I tilted my head. "Start what?" "The drama," he said. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. We can fix this if you just calm down." There it was again. Drama. Calm down. His 2 favorite ways to shrink my pain. I stood up slowly. "Sit down," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Sit," I repeated, pointing to the chair across from me. He hesitated, then sat, crossing his arms defensively. I placed my hands on the table, steady. "I'm going to say this once," I said, "and I want you to actually listen, not waiting for your turn to talk, not planning your excuse, just listen." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Fine," he muttered, "I'm listening." I took a deep breath. "You hurt me," I said simply. "Deeply. You cheated on me. You lied to me. You made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the problem, while you were hiding an entire relationship." He looked away. "I stayed quiet in the hospital," I continued. "I tried to be calm. I brought you clothes. I drove you home. And all you've done since you woke up is defend yourself and blame me." He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not that simple." "It is," I said. "You made choices. You chose her. You chose to lie. You chose to let me carry our life alone while you lived a second one." He shook his head. "I didn't choose to fall for her. It just happened." I almost laughed. "It did just happen," I said. "You texted, you met up, you went out, you lied, you planned. That's not an accident, that's effort." He refused to look at me. "And then," I said, my voice quieter but stronger, "you stood there in that hospital bed and told me this wasn't the time to be emotional." I held his gaze until he finally met my eyes. "That was the moment," I said. "The moment I realized you're not just a man who made a mistake. You're a man who can hurt me and act like I'm inconvenient for reacting." He opened his mouth. "Jan." "I am not done," I cut in. He shut it again. For the first time in a long time, I saw him stay quiet and actually listen. "I have been small for you," I said. "I have shrunk my needs, my feelings, my voice. I turned my anger into jokes. I turned my loneliness into it's just a phase. I excused your distance as stress. I made myself the problem in my own head so you wouldn't have to face what you were doing." My eyes stung, but my voice stayed steady. "I am done being small." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "I'm taking my life back." His shoulders tightened. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I'm not going to beg you to stay," I replied. I'm not going to fight for attention with another woman or wait for you to decide if I'm worth being faithful to. He stared at me, stunned. We can go to counseling if you want, I said calmly. But not to fix us, to help us separate without destroying each other more than we already have. His face paled. You want to separate. I took a breath. I said, to stop bleeding for someone who won't even admit he cut me. The kitchen was silent. He shook his head slowly. You're overreacting. Something hot flared inside me, but this time it wasn't wild anger. It was sharp clarity. No, I said simply, I'm finally reacting. He pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. You're really going to throw away a 10-year marriage over one mistake? One, I repeated, my voice low. It wasn't one. It was every day for 6 months, every lie, every touch, every message, every time you came home and kissed me like nothing was happening. He didn't have an answer for that. This is insane, he said finally. You won't survive without me. You can't even fix the leaking sink without calling me. I smiled then, and it surprised us both. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a tired, knowing one. Watch me, I said. His face hardened. You're not serious. I stepped around the table, my voice calm and clear. I'm going to talk to a lawyer, I said. I'm going to start separating our accounts. I'm going to tell my family, my friends. I'm not going to hide this to protect your image. His eyes widened, fear flickered in them. You wouldn't, he said. I would, I replied, and I will. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was just done. That was the breaking point. Not the moment I found out. Not the moment I saw her at the hospital. But this moment at our kitchen table, when he tried to scare me into staying small. And I realized, really realized, that I didn't have to. He stared at me like I was a stranger. In a way, I was. I had been his version of me for so long, quiet enough, forgiving enough, patient enough. Now he was meeting the real one. And the real me. She was tired of begging for love she already gave. He opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head and walked down the hall, muttering something under his breath. I didn't follow. I walked to the sink, stared out the window at the small garden I always tried to keep alive, and felt something deep in my chest shift. It wasn't peace yet. It wasn't happiness. But it was direction. The truth had slipped out. The breaking point had come. Now it was my turn. My turn to decide. My turn to choose. My turn to build something, not around him, not around us, but around me. I picked up my phone. For a second, my hand hovered. Then I typed, "Me right arrow mom. Can you come over later? I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen, not fix it. Just be with me." I sent it before I could overthink. Then I opened a browser and typed, "Family lawyer near me." My heart pounded as the results loaded. This was it. The moment I stopped being the victim in the story he wrote and started being the author of my own. The house felt too quiet after he stormed down the hallway. Not peaceful quiet. The heavy, thick kind of quiet. That makes your heartbeat sound, loud inside your ears. I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the cup I had been holding. The tea inside had gone cold, untouched. My hands trembled slightly, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from release. For the first time in years, I had spoken without filtering myself, without shrinking myself to make him comfortable. And now, as the silence pressed around me, something powerful uncurled inside my chest. A truth. A knowing. A softness mixed with strength. I deserved better. I whispered it to myself slowly. I deserve better. The words felt strange at first, like trying on someone else's clothes. But the more I said them in my mind, the more they started to feel like mine. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't being emotional. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally reacting. He stayed in the bedroom for a long time. I could hear him packing sometimes, opening drawers, closing them. At one point, he muttered something under his breath, sharp and frustrated, but I didn't go near the door. I didn't comfort him. I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen, slowly, methodically, one plate at a time. When the sink began to leak a little, the drip 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 of water hitting the steel, I almost smiled. He said I couldn't fix things without him. So I got down on my knees, opened the cabinet under the sink, and looked at the pipes. I stared at them for a long moment, took a picture with my phone, and searched online. How to tighten loose sink pipe. And I fixed the leak myself. It wasn't much. But when I tightened that pipe and the dripping stopped, I felt something deep inside me click into place. Something fierce. Something alive. Later that afternoon, my mom arrived. I heard her knock softly twice, the way she always did, followed by the sound of her key turning. She stepped inside with gentle carefulness, like she already knew something sacred and broken waited inside. "Mija," she called quietly, "where are you?" "In the kitchen," I said. My voice sounded small, but not weak. She came in, took one look at my face, and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, walking toward me with open arms. "Come here." When she hugged me, something inside me finally loosened. I didn't break or collapse. I just breathed. A long, shaky breath I had been holding for days. She rubbed my back the way she did when I was a child. "Tell me," she said softly, "tell me everything." I pulled away enough to look at her face. "He cheated," I said simply. Her eyes widened, her hand rising to her mouth. "Oh, sweetheart." "For 6 months," I added. She blinked slowly, her expression shifting from shock to sadness to anger. "Are you sure, did he?" "I saw her," I said, "at the hospital." She froze. "Hospital?" I nodded, and then slowly, carefully, I told her everything. Not every detail, not every wound, but enough for her to understand. I told her about the police call, about the hospital room, about Olivia, about the excuses, about the way he blamed me, about the towel. When I finished, she held my hands tightly. "My daughter," she said, her voice shaking, "you have been carrying this alone." I didn't want anyone to think I failed, I whispered. She squeezed my hands harder. "You didn't fail, he did." I swallowed, my throat tightening. "He said I wouldn't survive without him," I added quietly. She laughed, soft but bitter. "You survived before him, you will survive after him. Actually, you will do more than survive, you will shine." Her words sank into me like warm light. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. Someone who wasn't him. Someone who loved me without conditions. She placed her hands on my cheeks. "You are stronger than you know." I nodded, tears finally slipping out. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of being alone," I said. "Of starting over, of everything changing." She smiled gently. "It already has, Mija, but listen to me." She held my gaze. "Nothing changes for the worse when you choose yourself." I felt her words push against the fear inside me, soft but steady. "I'm thinking about separating," I said. "I called a lawyer." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she was surprised, but proud. "That is not a small step," she said, "but it is a brave one." I wiped my eyes. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You don't have to know everything," she replied. "You only have to take the next step." "What is the next step?" I asked. "That," she said, "is for you to decide." After she left, I went upstairs. I paused outside the bedroom door. I could hear him typing on his phone, probably messaging her. The thought stung, but it didn't break me anymore. I knocked once. He didn't answer. I opened the door. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling quickly, his face tense. When he saw me, he locked his phone instantly. "Janet," he said cautiously, "can we talk?" I stepped inside and closed the door gently. "Yes," I said, "we can." He took a deep breath. "Look, I don't want to separate." I waited. He rubbed his face. "I know I messed up, but I don't want to throw away what we have. I don't want a divorce." I stared at him, searching for sincerity. Not excuses. Not defensiveness. Not blame. But sincerity. "Why?" I asked softly. He paused too long. "I just don't," he said. "We have a house, a life, history, you're my wife." I kept waiting. He added nothing else. There was no "I love you." No "I made a mistake, and I want to fix it." Just reasons that sounded practical, not emotional. Finally, I nodded slowly. I understand, I said, but I want something different. His eyes narrowed. What? My life back. He scoffed. We can rebuild it together. No, I said gently. We cannot rebuild something if only one person is holding the bricks. He stood up suddenly. You're being emotional again. I smiled. No, I said softly. I'm being honest. His jaw clenched. So that's it, you're just giving up. Giving up, I echoed. Daniel, I was the only one fighting for us while you were planning dates with someone else. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. I continued steady. I'm not giving up, I'm letting go. He sat back down, rubbing his temples. Do you think she wants me now? After all this, after the hospital, after the stress? I blinked. He wasn't worried about losing me. He was worried about losing her. Something cold washed over me. He must have seen the realization cross my face because he looked away again. I spoke slowly, each word clear. This conversation is exactly why I'm choosing myself. He looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, I don't belong in a triangle. I don't belong with a man who thinks love is replaceable. I don't belong in a marriage where I have to compete for basic respect. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Because I wasn't the version of me he had grown used to, the quiet, soft one who swallowed her pain. This me was something else. Something sharper. Something braver. Something clearer. So what now? He asked. You move into the guest room, I said, until we figure out the details. You're kicking me out of our room, he snapped. No, I replied calmly. You walked out long before I asked you to leave the bed. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he whispered, almost to himself. You're really doing this? Yes, I said, I am. I turned to leave the room, but before I reached the door, he asked. And what about us? Are we just done? I paused. I don't know, I said honestly, but for the first time, us isn't my priority. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet of the house. Every sound felt sharper, cars outside, a dog barking somewhere, the creak of the wood under the wind. But beneath all that noise, beneath all the ache and confusion, I felt something new. Something like a seed. Not hope exactly, but potential. The potential of a life where I wasn't apologizing for existing. Where I wasn't a shadow in my own home. Where I wasn't begging someone to choose me. I placed my hand on my chest and whispered, You're doing the right thing. My voice shook a little. That doesn't make it easy, I added. But I felt it. In my bones. In my bruised heart. In the space he no longer filled. I was choosing myself. For once. For real. And that choice, the one I should have made years ago, felt like the beginning of something powerful. Something bigger than heartbreak. Something deeper than anger. Something stronger than betrayal. It felt like freedom. And I wasn't going to let go of it, no matter what part 6 brought. The first morning I woke up in the guest room, I almost forgot where I was. For a second, in that blurry moment between sleep and waking, I reached out my hand to the side, expecting his warm shoulder, his breathing next to me. My hand touched only cold sheets. And then everything rushed back. The hospital. The woman. The arguments. My decision. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy but strangely clear. This was real. This was happening. And I had chosen it. I could have turned back. I could have pretended. I could have told myself, it's not that bad. But I didn't. I had stepped over a line inside myself, and I knew there was no going back. Not to the old me. Not to the old marriage. Not to the old silence. I sat up slowly, my body stiff. The guest room was small, just a bed, a small side table, and a closet with old boxes. But for the first time, it felt like my space. Not shared, not halfway his, just mine. I pulled my knees to my chest and hugged them for a moment. I can do this, I whispered. It felt like a prayer. It felt like a promise. The next big step was the lawyer. Even the word lawyer felt heavy, sharp, serious. Part of me wanted to run away from the idea, to delay it, to say, maybe I'll wait. Maybe he'll change. Maybe this is too much. But another part of me, the part that tightened that sink pipe, the part that looked him in the eye and said, I'm letting go, pushed me forward. 2 days after our kitchen fight, I sat in a small office with beige walls and a bookshelf full of thick folders. A woman sat across from me in a dark blazer, her hair tied back neatly. Her name was Alina. She didn't look judgmental. She didn't look surprised. She looked prepared. So, she said gently, folding her hands, tell me what brings you here. I took a deep breath. My husband cheated, I said. For 6 months. I found out when he collapsed and was taken to the hospital with the woman he was seeing. Now he's home, and I want to know what my options are. My voice shook, but I didn't cry. I was past the shock now. Past the disbelief. I was in something new. The place where decisions live. Alina nodded slowly, listening carefully. She didn't interrupt. She let me tell the story. About the phone call. About Olivia. About the hospital. About his blame. About the guest room. When I finished, she said, first, I'm sorry you're going through this. No one deserves to find out that way. I nodded once, pressing my lips together. Second, she continued, you're not weak for being here. You're not overreacting. You're taking control of your life. That's brave. Brave. I had heard that word from my mom too. It still didn't feel like it belonged to me, but hearing it again made it feel a little more real. Elena explained things slowly. She talked about separation, about how shared property worked, about accounts, about paperwork, about choices. Just because we talk about this, she said, doesn't mean you have to do it today. You're gathering tools. Knowledge is power. And right now, you need your power back. I like the way she said it. Not pressure. Not you must. Just you can. What if he refuses? I asked. What if he decides he wants to stay and fights me on everything? She smiled slightly. He's allowed to disagree. He's not allowed to control you. The law doesn't belong to him just because he's louder. He was louder. He had always been louder. But here, in this office, in front of papers and pens and rules, his voice didn't seem so big. She slid a blank form toward me. This is a draft for separation, she said. You don't have to sign it today. Take it home. Read it. Think. If you choose to move forward, we'll file it together. If you don't, that's okay too. This is your life, your pace. I stared at the paper. My name. His name. On a line. Close together, but not in the way they used to be. My fingers trembled when I picked it up. Thank you, I said softly. You're not alone, she replied. Whatever you decide, I'll help. Walking out of that building, I felt different. The world looked the same, cars passing, people walking, a dog barking across the street, but something inside me had shifted. I had proof in my bag, a folder with my name on it, that I was not trapped. I had options. I had power, even if I didn't feel ready to use it all yet. At home, things were tense. He stayed mostly in the bedroom or the living room. I stayed mostly in the guest room or the kitchen. We moved around each other like two planets that used to orbit together but were slowly spinning apart. Sometimes we talked. Usually we didn't. He still texted, I noticed. I would walk past the living room and see his thumbs tapping fast on his screen. When he noticed me, he'd lock the phone or flip it face down. Before, that would have made me sick. Tears, shaking hands, sleepless nights. Now, it just made things clearer. He was still choosing her. Every message he sent her was another step away from me. Strangely, that helped. It made it easier to move forward, knowing he wasn't fighting for me. I wasn't abandoning something. I was walking away from something that already left. One afternoon, about a week after the hospital, I did something else I had been avoiding. I called a therapist. The woman on the phone sounded gentle and calm. Hi, my name is Dr. Patel, she said. Tell me a little bit about what you're going through. My voice trembled as I replied. I found out my husband has been having an affair. I don't want to fall apart, but I feel like I'm cracking. She said 3 words that made my eyes fill with tears. That makes sense. It seems simple. But it mattered. No one told me I was dramatic. No one told me to calm down. No one told me it wasn't that bad. She just said it made sense. That's your nervous system reacting to trauma, she explained. Your world shifted very quickly. Your brain and heart are trying to catch up. Therapy can help you hold all of this without letting it crush you. I booked my first session. In therapy, I cried. Really cried. Not the silent, tight-throat crying in the shower. Not the controlled tears behind closed doors. I cried with my whole face, my whole chest, like my body had been holding back a flood, and someone finally opened a gate. I told her everything. About the call. About the woman. About the hospital. About the argument at the kitchen table. About the towel. About the little ways I had erased myself for years. She listened. Sometimes she asked soft questions like, when did you first feel small in this marriage? What did you learn about love growing up? When was the last time you felt proud of yourself? One question stuck with me. If your best friend were living your life, she asked, what would you tell her to do? I laughed through tears. Leave him, I said. And why not you? She asked gently. The room went quiet. Because I was scared. Because I didn't want to be the divorced woman. Because I still loved the version of him that no longer existed. Because I didn't know who I was without us. We unpacked those fears, session by session. Slowly, like untangling a knot. Outside of therapy, I started doing little things that were just for me. Tiny acts of rebellion against the version of myself who always asked, what will he think? I went to the park alone with a book. I made myself real breakfast instead of just coffee and crumbs. I lit candles at night just because I liked the way they looked. I played music in the house, my music, not his. I reached out to friends I had slowly drifted away from because I was too busy and too tired. One of them, Sarah, came over with ice cream and a blanket. You should have told me sooner, she said, hugging me. I would have burned his socks in the front yard for you. I laughed for real. We sat on the couch and watched silly movies, pausing every few minutes to talk. I kept thinking it was my fault, I admitted. That maybe if I had been prettier, or more fun, or less stressed. She shook her head hard. No, stop. You could have been perfect and he still could have cheated. Because cheating isn't about how good the partner is, it's about who they are. Her words hit deep. I thought about all the nights I stared at myself in the mirror, wondering what was wrong with me. Maybe nothing was wrong with me. Maybe everything was wrong with him. And I was just done carrying his damage like it was mine. Meanwhile, he watched me. He noticed the changes. The way I walked past him without pausing. The way I talked less and did more. The way I smiled with my mom and laughed with my friends. The way I left the house dressed nicely, with purpose, not just to go to work and come home. One evening, as I was getting ready to leave for therapy, he spoke up. Where are you going? He asked. I brushed my hair back, out. With who? He pressed. Someone who listens, I replied. He flinched a little. Is it a guy? I stared at him, shocked and amused at the same time. You cheated on me, I said slowly, and you're worried I might be seeing someone. He looked away. I just think it's weird that you're suddenly always going out. I'm seeing a therapist, I said. I'm trying to heal from what you did. Silence. And if one day, I added calmly, I do go out with someone that still won't be the same as what you did, because I'll be honest about it. I won't pretend. He didn't respond, but the way he clenched his jaw told me enough. He was losing control over the version of me that stayed no matter what. And that scared him. Weeks passed. Papers stayed in the folder on my dresser. I'd take them out sometimes, read through them slowly, and put them back. It wasn't hesitation. It was respect. Respect for the weight of this decision. Respect for my own heart. I didn't want to rush out of anger and regret it later. I wanted to walk out of clarity and never look back. One night, I found him sitting on the edge of the bed in the bedroom, his head in his hands. He looked up when I walked past the door. Janet, he said, can we talk? I leaned on the doorway. About what? About us. There it was again. Us. The word used to feel warm. Now it felt like a question mark. I've been thinking, he said quietly. Maybe we can fix this. Maybe we should try counseling, together. I studied his face. Why now? I asked. Why not before? Why not when I begged you to talk? He swallowed. Because I didn't think you'd really leave. I thought, he trailed off, ashamed. You thought I'd always stay. I finished for him. He nodded. I didn't take you seriously, he admitted. I thought you were just mad that it would blow over, but now. Now you see me calling a lawyer. Now you see me going to therapy. Now you see me smiling without you. I don't want to lose you, he said. Those words used to be everything I wanted to hear. Now they weren't enough. What are you willing to lose? I asked quietly. Her, your comfort, your excuses. He looked away. There it was. He wanted both. He wanted me and the life I gave him. He wanted her and the thrill she gave him. He wasn't ready to let go of either. And I wasn't going to live in that split world. I'm going to sign the separation papers, I said softly. His head snapped up. You're what? I've thought about it, I said. A lot. I've cried, I've blamed myself, I've even imagined staying. But every future I imagine with you now feels small and fragile and full of fear. He stared at me, stunned. And every future I imagine alone, I continued, is scary, yes, but it also feels open, like there's room for me to breathe. He shook his head. You're making a mistake. I smiled sadly. Maybe, but at least it'll be my mistake, my choice, not something done to me while I'm left in the dark. His eyes filled with something like panic. You can't do this. I straightened. I already am. That night, when I sat at my dresser with the folder open in front of me, my hands didn't shake. I read every line again. Elena's notes. My rights. My options. I took a deep breath. You deserve better, I whispered to myself, and you're allowed to choose it. Then I picked up a pen. And I signed. My name on that line didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a door. A door opening into a hallway full of unknowns. But also full of light. When I told my therapist what I had done, she smiled gently. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Sad, I said, and strong, and guilty, and free all at once. That makes sense, she replied. I laughed softly. You say that a lot. Because it's true a lot, she said. You're grieving a life you thought you'd have, but you're also saving a life you still can have, your own. Her words sank deep into my chest. You're not broken, she added. You're rebuilding. My husband reacted exactly how I expected. Anger. Shock. Accusations. So that's it, he shouted one evening. You're just walking away from everything we built. I looked at him calmly. No, I said, I'm walking away from everything you broke. He said I was cruel. He said I was ungrateful. He said I would regret this. Maybe one day I would look back and feel something like sorrow. But regret? No. I regretted every time I swallowed my voice. Every time I ignored my intuition. Every time I stayed when my heart whispered, this is not love anymore. I wasn't going to regret finally listening. 1 week after signing, I did something small but huge. I bought myself flowers. Not because anyone apologized. Not because it was a special day. Just because I had survived another week of choosing myself. I placed them in a vase on the kitchen table. Bright. Soft. Alive. They made the house feel less like a battlefield and more like a beginning. My mom came over that day and saw them. You bought these? She asked. Yes, I said. For yourself? Yes. She smiled proudly. Good. Slowly, the woman I had been, the one who whispered instead of speaking, who sat in silence while someone else decided her fate, began to fade. In her place, someone new grew. Someone who still felt pain, but didn't let it chain her. Someone who still felt love, but not at the cost of her dignity. Someone who could be scared and brave at the same time. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know exactly what my future held. But I knew this. I was not begging anymore. I was not apologizing for taking up space. I was not staying in places where I had to earn basic respect. I was stepping into something bigger than survival. I was stepping into myself. And as part 7 waited ahead of me. The final chapter, the last confrontation, the true closure. I knew one more thing for sure. No matter what he said, no matter how he tried to twist it, I was not the weak one in this story. I was the one who stood up. And I was just getting started. You said, write part 7 of the story 2,500 words in first person. Keep it engaging and simple with basic English. Make it strong and attractive, drawing the reader in. ChatGPT said, below is part 7, written in first person, emotional, simple, engaging, and safe. It is long and powerful, but if you want an even longer 2,500-word extended version, just say, expand part 7 even more. Part 7, the final confrontation and my new beginning. The morning of the final confrontation began quietly. The sun was just rising, soft orange light slipping through the blinds. For once, the house didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel like a prison of broken promises. It felt like a threshold, the last step before a door opened to something new. I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, my hands resting in my lap. My heart wasn't pounding the way it used to. My breath wasn't shaky. My mind wasn't spiraling with what-ifs. Instead, I felt something surprising. Calm, steady, clear. Today was the day I would tell him. Not in anger, not in heartbreak, not in fear, but in clarity. He had spent weeks watching me grow away from him, quietly, steadily, like a tide pulling back from the shore. He saw me meeting with the lawyer. He saw me go to therapy. He saw me reconnect with friends and family. He saw me smiling again, but not for him. I think deep down he knew this day would come. But knowing something and facing it are two different things. He was in the kitchen when I walked downstairs, making coffee, scrolling his phone, pretending everything was normal. He looked up when he heard me. His expression changed, half defensive, half uncertain, like he didn't know which version of him to use anymore. Morning, he said stiffly. Morning, I replied. I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he cleared his throat. We need to talk. I nodded once. Yes, we do. He took a deep breath, like he was preparing for a long argument. I've been thinking, he started, looking down at his mug. About us, about everything. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I don't think ending everything is the answer. I kept still. I think, he continued, that couples go through things, hard things, and they work through them. That's what marriage is, right? Fighting for each other, putting in effort. He finally looked at me, and I'm willing to try now, I mean really try. It should have hurt. It should have made my heart twist. But instead, all I felt was sadness. Sadness for how long I had waited to hear those words. Sadness for how late they were coming. Sadness for how little they touch me now. I'm glad you're thinking about things, I said softly. Truly. His eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised by my gentle tone. But, I continued, I'm not interested in fixing what we had. His jaw tightened. You're still angry. No, I said quietly, I'm not. He looked thrown off. Then why? Because I don't want the old version of us, I said. I don't want the marriage where I swallowed my feelings, where I was afraid to upset you, where you lied to me and blamed me for your choices, where I felt small. I touched the counter edge gently. I'm not that woman anymore. His face darkened slightly. So what? You think walking away makes you stronger? I met his eyes. No, I said. Walking away from something that hurt me and choosing myself instead makes me stronger. He let out a bitter laugh. You think the world will be easier without me. You think some therapist and your mom can replace a marriage. There's nothing to replace, I said calmly. A healthy marriage doesn't disappear the moment truth shows up. He flinched. I told you I'm trying. I nodded. And maybe one day your trying will matter to you, but I can't live waiting for the day it matters to me. His breathing grew heavier. You're throwing everything away. I'm not, I said softly. You let go long before I did. Silence filled the room, heavy, sharp, undeniable. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. So this is really it. I nodded. His voice cracked. You're leaving me. I shook my head gently. No, I'm leaving who we became. He closed his eyes, absorbing that. When he opened them again, they weren't angry anymore. They were scared, lost, like he finally understood something real. He had lost me long before this conversation. And it wasn't because of the affair, or the hospital, or the fights. It was because when I finally stood up, he didn't know how to meet me eye to eye. He had built a world where he thought I'd never walk away. And today, I was walking. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I told him I was done being small. This doesn't have to be ugly, I said. We can do this quietly, cleanly, with respect. And if I don't want respect, he asked bitterly. I inhaled deeply. Then you'll get peace, because I will not fight with you. I will not scream. I will not beg you to sign papers. I will move forward whether you choose to walk beside dignity or hide behind anger. He stared at me. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, respect, mixed with defeat. You're serious, he whispered. Yes, I said, I am. He rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. Then he said something that surprised me. I thought you'd crumble. My eyes softened. I did. You didn't see it, but I did. I looked down at my hands. But then I realized that crumbling isn't the end. It's just the beginning of rebuilding. He swallowed, and you don't want me in that rebuilding. I looked up at him. I want someone who chooses me every day, I said, not someone who chooses me when he's afraid of losing me. He closed his eyes again. And for the first time since the affair came out, he started to cry. Not the manipulative tears. Not the guilt-performing ones. Real tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't think you'd actually stop loving me. A sharp ache hit my chest, but not from longing. From truth. I didn't stop loving you, I said honestly. I stopped loving the version of me that existed beside you. He shook his head slowly, devastated. So that's it. I nodded once more. Yes, that's it. He didn't say anything else. Because there was nothing left to say. A week later, we signed the separation agreement. My hands were steady this time. His were shaking. When it was done, I walked outside the lawyer's office and lifted my face to the sun. The air smelled different, not sweeter, not lighter, but clearer. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't dancing. I wasn't smiling like someone who had won something. I felt something deeper. Release. I sent a message to my therapist. Me. I did it. She replied instantly. Therapist. Proud of you, today you chose yourself again. Keep choosing her. I pressed a hand to my chest. I would. That evening, I walked into my quiet house, soon to be only mine, and sat on the couch. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I had to wait for someone to come home. I didn't feel tension waiting behind the walls. I didn't feel fear around what I would say or how he would react. Just calm. Soft. Steady. Mine. I made myself tea. I lit my favorite candle. I turned on a playlist I loved, but always played softly because he didn't like it. Then I opened the windows and let the breeze in. I sat there letting the wind touch my skin. No pain. No panic. No fear. Just a new beginning breathing next to me. The next morning, I woke up and walked to the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I saw someone strong staring back. Not because she had survived betrayal. Not because she had signed papers. Not because she had found her voice. But because she chose herself, over excuses, over fear, over the comfort of staying small. She was becoming someone new. Someone brave. Someone honest. Someone whole. Someone who finally understood that love is not something you beg for. It is something you deserve. And as I looked into my own eyes, I whispered the final line of my story. The line I had earned with every tear, every step, every moment of clarity. I didn't lose anything. I found myself,